beginning, middle, and end to just, a standalone book. It's kind of like reading The Hobbit. You can read the book, but you can be satisfied with the end of The Hobbit instead of going to The Lord of the Rings, which, you're going to be missing out on a lot if you don't read The Lord of the Rings, but if you just stop on The Hobbit, you're good. And since many of these kids were, kids, they just read one book and they were done. They didn't really want to read any other books in this franchise, so many of them kind of went to the wayside. Or they were just, required to read these books or this one particular book, I should say, as a kid during, school and all that, like middle school or whatever, especially in the South because of some religious fervory within the South and these books being very, very religious, which we'll get into later on. So many kids were probably required to read this as, kids in school or whatever, or Sunday school, or they're just very, very Christian and these were the only real fantasy books that were kind of readily available to certain Christian people, but don't read anything else. This is just this one book. This one book. There you go. So what is the Chronicles of Narnia, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe about? Well, there is a lion, there is a witch, and there's a wardrobe. Let's get into it. So this book basically follows the Peregrine children. If I mispronounced that, I'm sorry, but here we go. So the Peregrine children, from oldest to youngest, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, as they travel from London, supposedly, to the English countryside to have a stay with this professor to wait out basically World War II. And it's during this stay when they're playing hide and seek in the multitude of rooms in this mansion that the professor has, that Lucy stumbles upon this wardrobe where she hides and all of a sudden is magically get transported into Narnia, aka the land of Narnia. Also, I guess, aka the kingdom, of Narnia, because we find out there's other kingdoms within this world of Narnia that's also the kingdom of Narnia. I don't know, confusing. Anyway, Lucy sees a lamppost in the middle of a forest, whimsy, and meets Mr. Tumnus, a half man, half goat thing. I know there's a name for it, but I was too lazy to figure that out, but I think it's a fae. I'm whatever. She has some adventures with him, just sipping tea and whatever, and all that type of stuff. Transports back to the real world, talks to the kids. They're not believing her at all for the most part, and she travels back to Narnia again, but this time with Edmund, and Edmund meets the witch, aka 2 out of the 3 in this name. We met the witch and we met the wardrobe. Where's the lion? We're getting to that. Calm down. Anyway, there's this whole thing with Turkish delight and all that, and they get transported back. Edmund is like, oh, I don't know what Narnia is, even though he was in Narnia. And then I guess while they were still playing hide and seek, all the kids get transported to Narnia. And they gotta fight the witch because she's evil and she's the Snow Queen. That's why the entire world is covered in cold ice and snow. Hence why many people think this is a Christmas book. We'll get to that. They meet the beaver couple there because, they're there and they say that there's a prophecy about the daughters of Eve and the sons of Adam. Oh, we'll get to that too. Anyway, fast forward through all this, Edmund betrays the kids and, becomes like the Judas, basically, of this story because he wants more Turkish delight. And for all those who have had Turkish delight and those who like Turkish delight, no offense to you, but how can you like Turkish delight? It is the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth. It is basically the fruitcake of candy. But anyway, I guess Turkish Delight is a Christmas candy, supposedly, in Turkey and around Turkey. So there you go, I guess. Also, the kids are running from the witch's henchmen or whatever, and then who's they should bump into but Father Christmas. Yes, Santa. Santa gives them swords and daggers and, fighting material. This is one badass Santa, let me tell you. And this is proof, apparently, for some people, that this is a Christmas book. Even though Santa appears in like 3 pages, I wouldn't necessarily put it as a Christmas book necessarily. I would put this as a Easter book because of Aslan and what he is going to do later on. Here we go. The lion parts of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They finally, after the snow melts, they meet Aslan, the creator of the land. And yeah, in the movies voiced by Liam Neeson, aka the greatest thing that these movies have ever put to screen. It's a fabulous voice, but anyway. They take back Edmund, but because of some weird rules or something, the witch has to have someone because they betrayed or whatever, and Aslan takes up that mantle and has his mane cut off and it dies by the witch's hand, but then is resurrected before the final battle. And then this battle takes place with Edmund and Peter at the helm and all that, and they're fighting, and the girls, Susan and Lucy, that they're all like, oh, Aslan's back, heck yeah, let's fight him. The lion takes off the witch's head, basically, and it's all cuckoo craziness. But then all of a sudden they win, they restore peace among Narnia, and the sons of Adam, the daughters of Eve, they are kings and queens of Narnia, and a golden age of Narnia takes place. They grow up inside this world until they see the lamp again, and then they transport back through the wardrobe where time has not passed, and they lived a whole life. They lived a whole entire life inside this world, but then they're put back as kids all of a sudden. And you don't think that there's any repercussions to that? Nope. There you go. Now, by the tone of my voice, you're probably thinking I'm mocking this, and I'm kind of not, for the most part. This book is actually really well written, especially for kids. I mean, this was basically the realm, the time frame of Dr. Seuss books. And while Dr. Seuss is great, they're very, very simple. They don't have huge, gigantic battles and all that type of stuff, right? This is more akin to The Hobbit than Dr. Seuss, It's not so simple, and it deals with a lot of stuff that kids are kind of like, wait, this happens? Like Edmund betrayed them. He's not a bad guy? No, he's not. He's confused, but, you can always find your way back to the good. And also the reason why this is an Easter book and not necessarily a Christmas book is because of Aslan. And yes, the whole resurrection thing, this is why I put the religious subtext about C.S. Lewis in the beginning of this video. It's because these books are very heavily Christian. In fact, it's kind of unapproachable to even disconnect the Christianity of these books to Christianity, because it's so intertwined. It's very, very blatant. I mean, at least Tolkien, you can kind of, cut out the Christianity if you feel so inclined. But with C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia, you cannot. It is very, very blatant that Aslan is like the Jesus representative of this world, basically. And apparently, in later books, you will find out that he actually is, in fact, Jesus. Yes, God apparently made a whole other world full of centaurs and weird things that humanity has made for I don't know, getting these few kids into heaven. I don't know, but God can do whatever he wants, there you go. And I gotta say, this is a very, very bold stance that C.S. Lewis decided to take, because his first book basically is a very heavily Christian allegory children's book. And not only that, but it's written very, very, very well. This is a story that I would assume was rattling around in his brain for quite a long time. And you finally put it to paper, pen to paper, put it to story, bada bing, bada boom, one of the best sellers of all time. Yeah, it's kind of worth it, in my opinion. And believe it or not, this is also a time when many people tended to be more secular than, other areas in time and space. Like, for instance, I bring this up, even though it's a little tangent, but Charlie Brown Christmas, right? You see that Linus recites the King James version of the Nativity from the Bible and all that. There was a huge backlash from the channel ABC because there's Christianity in this special and we should be secular and all that, but they pushed back on it. So there was a lot of not necessarily all that Christian, stuff happening within the world at that point. So to have a very heavy Christian allegory in one of the biggest best-selling Christian or children's books ever made, yeah, that takes some balls. And you know what? C.S. Lewis definitely had some balls. But I get it, some people find Christianity triggering or whatever. So if you don't necessarily like this particular book, I won't blame you, and you don't have to read it if you don't want to. And to be fair, there are other books within this franchise that you can just pick up if you feel so inclined that don't have a very heavy Christian allegory to it. It's still there, but you can there's a lot easier time of separating the Christianity from it for the most part. So there is that. Few books, not a lot of books, but they do exist. Now, there's a lot of questions that I have within this book that's kind of puzzling, to say the least. Like, for instance, why did God create this world? Yeah, probably to save, a few kids, get them into heaven and all that, but they seem pretty fine before. So what is the purpose of this land? Why are they doing this? Why is Aslan a lion? Why is Jesus a lion? But then again, these are fairly nitpicks and not necessarily world-shattering questions. It's a fantasy story. Don't take it too seriously, all that type of stuff, whatever. But if you really think about it, those are the questions that pop up to me. Also, there's a few other questions, like why wasn't there a big identity crisis that the kids had because they lived a whole life in Narnia, but then were transported back to being kids in the real world after spending like 50 years or something like that in this magical world. What's the deal with that? But then again, yes, this is a children's book. You're not supposed to take it too seriously. I get it. But at the same time, Harry Potter, they deal with a lot of questions that I got my answer to within the book series, not in Rowling's tweets or whatever. But still, they're questions that I still linger on to this day after reading the book. But anyway, yes, we move on